Thomas gripped the crowbar tighter. As flames roared around the mangled vehicle, his hands were already blistered from prying at the jammed door, sweat and ash streaking his face as the heat pressed against him like a living thing inside the overturned SUV. A young girl stared back at him through the shattered window, her blonde hair matted with blood, her eyes wide with terror. "Please don't leave me," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the crackling fire. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart," Thomas shouted back, wedging the crowbar into the doorframe again. "What's your name?" "Lily," she said, coughing as smoke began filling the cabin. "I'm scared, I know, Lily, but we're going to get you out." Thomas had been driving home from his construction job when he saw the accident happen. The Wildfire had jumped the highway 30 minutes earlier, sending panicked drivers fleeing in all directions. He'd watched the black SUV swerve to avoid a burning tree, flip 3 times, and land on its side directly in the path of the advancing flames. Any sane person would have kept driving. Thomas had a daughter waiting for him at home, but he'd also been a firefighter once, before an injury forced him into construction work, and some instincts you never lose. He'd pulled over, grabbed his toolbox, and run toward the wreck while other cars sped past. Now he was racing against time as fire consumed the dry grass around them, moving closer with each passing second. "Is anyone else in there with you?" he called out. Lily shook her head. "My driver, he got out and ran. He told me to stay put, and he'd get help, but he didn't come back." Rage flared in Thomas's chest, but he pushed it down. "Focus on what you can control." The door finally gave way with a screech of metal. Thomas tossed the crowbar aside and reached through the opening. "Can you move? Are you hurt?" "My leg is stuck," Lily said, tears streaming down her face, "and my seatbelt won't unbuckle." Thomas climbed halfway into the vehicle. The heat inside, overwhelming the steering wheel, had partially collapsed. Pinning her leg, he pulled his pocket knife and cut through the seatbelt, then assessed the situation. "This is going to hurt," he warned, "but I need you to be brave for me." Lily nodded, biting her lip. Thomas braced himself and pushed against the steering column with all his strength. It shifted slightly. Just enough. Lily screamed as he pulled her leg free. "I've got you now." He lifted her out of the wreck, just as flames reached the fuel tank. Thomas ran, carrying the girl in his arms, putting as much distance as possible between them and the SUV. 20 seconds later, it exploded behind them. The shockwave knocked Thomas to his knees. But he held on to Lily, shielding her body with his own, as burning debris rained down around them. When the immediate danger passed, he looked down at her. "You okay?" She nodded, clinging to his neck in the distance. Sirens wailed. Thomas carried Lily toward the sound, away from the flames, his lungs burning with each breath. Paramedics met them on the highway, immediately surrounding the girl. "Sir, you need treatment too," one of them said, pointing at Thomas's burned hands and arms. "I'm fine," Thomas said, though he wasn't just take care of her. "Wait," Lily called out as they loaded her into the ambulance. "What's your name?" "Thomas," he replied. "Thomas Whitmore." "Thank you, Thomas," she said, her voice breaking. "You saved my life." He managed a weary smile. "Get that leg looked at?" Lily, as the ambulance pulled away. Another emergency vehicle arrived. A fire chief Thomas recognized stepped out. "Whitmore? That you?" "Hey, Captain Rodriguez." Rodriguez looked him over with a mixture of concern and respect. "Heard the call about a civilian rescue. Should have known it was you. Can't stay away from the fire, can you?" "Old habits. Those burns need attention, I know. I'm going." But Thomas didn't move. He stood watching the wildfire rage across the landscape, thinking about how close it had been. How easily Lily could have died alone in that vehicle. Finally, Rodriguez guided him to a paramedic unit. 3 hours later, Thomas sat in the emergency room with his hands bandaged, filling out paperwork he couldn't afford. No insurance, no savings to speak of, just a single dad trying to make ends meet while raising his 12-year-old daughter, Maya. His phone buzzed. Maya calling for the 4th time. "Dad, where are you? You were supposed to be home 2 hours ago. I'm at the hospital, baby. But I'm okay." Her sharp intake of breath cut him. "What happened?" "Nothing serious, just some minor burns. I'll explain when I get home." "Burns? Dad, what did you do?" "Help someone," he said simply. "I'll be there soon." Promise, when he finally made it home to their small apartment, Maya was waiting at the door. She threw her arms around him, careful of his bandaged hands. "You're crazy, you know that?" "Yeah, I know," she pulled back, studying his face, "but I'm proud of you too." Thomas kissed her forehead. "How was school?" "Boring compared to your day." Apparently they ordered pizza since he couldn't cook, and Maya helped him eat it later as she did her homework at the kitchen table. Thomas sat on the couch wondering about Lily. Was her leg broken? Was she scared in the hospital alone? Where were her parents? He got his answer 2 days later when someone knocked on their apartment door. Thomas opened it to find a woman in her early 50s, elegant in a tailored navy suit. Her blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun. Behind her stood Lily in a wheelchair, her leg in a cast, but smiling. "Mr. Whitmore?" the woman asked. "That's me. I'm Victoria Hammond." She extended her hand, then noticed his bandages and withdrew it. "I'm Lily's mother. May we come in?" Thomas stepped aside, suddenly very aware of how small and shabby their apartment must look to these people. Victoria Hammond, the name rang a bell. Maya appeared from her room, eyes widening at the visitors. "Maya, this is Lily and her mother." Thomas said. "The girl I told you about." "Hi," Maya said shyly. Lily brightened. "You're Thomas's daughter? He told me about you while we were waiting for the ambulance. He did. He said you were the bravest person he knew." Maya blushed, glancing at her father. Victoria cleared her throat. "Mr. Whitmore, I owe you more than I can possibly express. Lily is my only child, and when I got the call about the accident," her voice broke and she paused to compose herself, "I nearly lost everything that matters, and you, a complete stranger, risked your life to save her. Anyone would have done the same." "But they didn't," Victoria said firmly. "Dozens of cars passed that accident. The driver I hired ran away and left my daughter to die. You were the only one who stopped." Thomas didn't know what to say to that. Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is a small token of my gratitude." Thomas shook his head. "I don't want your money, Mrs. Hammond. Please, I insist." "No," he said gently. "I didn't save Lily for a reward. I did it because it was the right thing to do." Victoria stared at him, clearly unused to people refusing her. "At least let me pay your medical bills that I'll accept." Thomas admitted healthcare isn't cheap. She smiled slightly. "I noticed from your records that you were a firefighter." Thomas tensed. "Used to be. Injured my back in a building collapse 6 years ago. Can't pass the physical anymore. But you ran into a wildfire, different kind of physical demand." Victoria studied him for a long moment. "What do you do now?" "Construction, whatever pays, and you're raising Maya alone?" Her mother left when she was 3. Hasn't looked back. Maya had taken Lily to her room to show her something, leaving the adults alone. Victoria sat down without being invited, a woman used to commanding spaces. "Mr. Whitmore, I didn't just come here to thank you. I came to make you an offer." "What kind of offer?" "I'm the CEO of Hammond Industries. We manufacture safety equipment for emergency responders across the country. I'm also on the board of the State Fire Safety Commission." Thomas waited, unsure where this was going. "I've spent 2 days thinking about how a trained firefighter can't work in his field because of an injury, while my company develops cutting-edge equipment that could potentially help people in your situation. It seems like a waste. Mrs. Hammond, please, call me Victoria and hear me out." She leaned forward. "I want to hire you as a consultant. Your real-world experience is invaluable. You could help us develop better equipment, train our teams, maybe even work with the commission on new safety protocols." Thomas felt dizzy. "I don't have a college degree. I barely finished high school. You have something better, experience and instinct, the kind that saves lives. I can't afford to take a risk on a job that might not work out. I have Maya to think about. The salary would be $80,000 a year to start, with full benefits, including health care that would cover any treatments you might need for your back." Thomas's jaw dropped. He currently made $32,000 if he was lucky. "Why?" he managed. "Why would you do this?" Victoria's eyes glistened. "Because you gave me back my daughter without asking for anything in return. Because I've spent 20 years building a company that's supposed to protect people, And I want someone on my team who actually understands what that means. She stood. Think about it, there's no pressure, but I mean every word after they left. Maya emerged from her room. Dad, did she just offer you a job? I think so. Are you going to take it? Thomas looked at his daughter, at the hope in her eyes, at the apartment they'd lived in for 6 years because it was all he could afford. I don't know if I'm qualified. You ran into fire to save a stranger. Maya said I think you were qualified that night. Thomas couldn't sleep. He thought about Victoria's offer, about the life it could give Maya, about whether he deserved it. He thought about all the times he'd struggled to pay rent, to buy groceries, to give his daughter even a fraction of what other kids had. And he thought about Lily, trapped in that burning vehicle, and how none of it mattered in that moment except getting her out at 3 a.m. He made his decision. He called Victoria from the number on her business card, Mr. Whitmore. She answered, alert despite the hour. When do I start? 6 months later, Thomas stood in Hammond Industries' testing facility, watching as firefighters tried out new protective gear he'd helped design. Maya sat in the observation room doing homework. Comfortable in a space that had become familiar, Victoria approached, Lily walking beside her without the wheelchair. Now the captain says, this is the best gear they've tested in 10 years. Thomas smiled. It's good work. You're good at it, Victoria said. I knew you would be. Lily tugged his sleeve. Thomas, Mom wants to ask you something, but she's nervous. Lily, Victoria warned. What is it? Thomas asked. Victoria shot her daughter a look, then sighed. We're having a company dinner next month. Board members and executives. I was hoping you and Maya might attend as my guests. That's not really our scene, please? Lily interjected. Maya's my friend. I want her there. Thomas looked at the two of them, this CEO and her daughter who'd somehow become part of his life. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. As they walked away, Maya appeared at his side. You should go, Dad. Why? Because Mrs. Hammond looks at you the same way you look at her. Thomas nearly choked. What? I'm 12, not blind, Maya said, and Lily told me her mom hasn't dated anyone since her dad left 8 years ago. Maya, it's not like that. Okay, Dad, but the seed was planted. Thomas started noticing things the way Victoria sought his opinion, even on matters outside his expertise, how she always seemed to have coffee ready when he arrived in the morning. The fact that she'd engineered reasons for him and Maya to spend time with her and Lily outside of work, and if he was being honest, he noticed how his heart rate increased when she entered a room, how he found excuses to stop by her office, how he started caring about things beyond just doing his job well. 3 weeks before the dinner, Victoria asked him to stay late to review some designs. The building was empty except for security. They worked side by side until Victoria finally set down her pen. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Why did you really run toward that fire? Thomas considered the question. Because I couldn't live with myself if I hadn't. Because I'd want someone to do the same for Maya. Because some things are more important than your own safety, even for a stranger? Everyone's someone's daughter, he said quietly. Victoria reached across the table and took his hand, mindful of the scars that still marked it. I was so angry after the accident, at the driver who abandoned her, at myself for not being there, at a world where good people get hurt and selfish ones walk away. She looked up at him, and then you showed me that good people still exist, that some things matter more than money or status or self-preservation. Victoria, let me finish. She said I built a company. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. I've accomplished everything I set out to do, but I've been lonely, pretending I'm too busy for anything else. I know the feeling, and then you came along, a man who risks everything for others and wants nothing in return, who loves his daughter fiercely and works harder than anyone I've ever met, who makes me remember what it feels like to hope for something more. Thomas's throat tightened. I'm just a guy who got lucky. No, Victoria said, you're the man who saved my daughter, who brought light back into both our lives, who made me believe in second chances. She squeezed his hand. So I'm asking, is there any chance you feel the same way? Thomas looked at this brilliant, beautiful woman who'd given him a career and a future, who'd become a friend, who made him think about possibilities he'd stopped believing in. Yeah, he said softly, I do. Victoria smiled, truly smiled. And in that moment Thomas saw not a CEO or a benefactor, but simply a woman who'd been as lonely as him. "Then maybe," she said, "we could go to that dinner together. As more than colleagues, I'd like that." They sat in the quiet office, hands still clasped, two people who'd found each other in the aftermath of fire and fear, and learned that sometimes the greatest rescue is the one you don't see coming, the one that saves your heart. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of courage and unexpected love. Comment below about a time when doing the right thing led to something wonderful. You never expected your story might inspire someone who needs to believe in second chances.